In the tranquil village of Willowbrook, a grand family reunion at Hargrove Manor hides a deadly secret. A cryptic letter warns of a scandal buried since 1932, betrayal, greed, and a lost Viking chalice that could tear the family apart. Enter Miss Jane Marple, whose keen mind unravels a web of poison, deception, and sabotage. Who's pulling the strings? Is it a vengeful outsider, a desperate heir, or a traitor within? As shadows whisper and danger strikes, can Miss Marple expose the truth before the manor's legacy crumbles?
Chapter 1. The Arrival in Willowbrook. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels against the tracks lulled Miss Jane Marple into a state of gentle reverie as she gazed out the window at the rolling English countryside. It was a fine spring afternoon in 1952, with hedgerows bursting into verdant life and distant church spires piercing the soft blue sky like forgotten sentinels. At 74, Miss Marple found such journeys invigorating rather than tiring. They offered ample time to observe the world and its inhabitants, piecing together the subtle mosaics of human behavior that so often revealed more than words ever could. She adjusted her spectacles and smoothed the folds of her sensible tweed skirt, her knitting bag resting faithfully at her feet like an old companion. Inside it lay a half-finished scarf of soft wool, its pattern an intricate web of loops and twists that mirrored the complexities she delighted in unraveling. This trip to Willowbrook was at the invitation of her dear friend Lady Evelyn Hargrove, whom she had known since their school days at a modest finishing academy in Devon. Evelyn, now widowed and ensconced in the grandeur of Hargrove Manor, had written with uncharacteristic urgency, "Dearest Jane, do come. The family gathers, and I sent shadows where there should be light. Your presence would be a balm." Miss Marple smiled faintly. Shadows, indeed. Evelyn had always possessed a flair for the dramatic, but beneath it lay a shrewd mind that rarely exaggerated without cause. The village of Willowbrook, nestled in the Cotswolds, was reputed for its picturesque charm. Stone cottages with thatched roofs, a winding river dotted with swans, and meadows alive with wildflowers. Yet, as the train slowed into the station, Miss Marple noted the overcast clouds gathering on the horizon, casting a muted pall over the platform. A young porter, his cap askew and cheeks flushed from the breeze, helped her alight with her modest valise. "Miss Marple, Lady Hargrove's carriage is waiting, ma'am." He tipped his hat politely, and she rewarded him with a warm thank you and a small coin. The carriage itself was a relic of bygone elegance. A polished black landau drawn by two glossy chestnuts, driven by a grizzled coachman named Perkins, who greeted her with a gruff nod. As they clip-clopped along the lane, Perkins shared snippets of local lore. Tales of ancient barrows on the hills where druids once whispered secrets to the wind, and a recent spate of petty thefts from the village allotments blamed on mischievous foxes, or perhaps something more human. Hargrove Manor loomed into view after a gentle ascent, its honey-colored stone facade glowing softly in the fading light. Ivy clung to the walls like possessive fingers, and the expansive gardens bloomed with tulips and daffodils in riotous colors, their petals nodding in the breeze as if in greeting. Miss Marple's sharp eyes took in the details. A gardener pruning roses with meticulous care, a maid scurrying across the lawn with a tray of linens, and the faint sound of laughter drifting from an open window. The estate buzzed with activity. Preparations for the family reunion were evident in the strung lanterns and the scent of fresh-baked scones wafting from the kitchens. Lady Evelyn herself emerged from the grand oak doors, her silver hair elegantly coiffed and her silk dress whispering with each step. At 68, she retained the poise of her aristocratic upbringing, though lines of worry etched her forehead like fine cracks in porcelain. "Jane, my darling, how splendid you look! Travel agrees with you." She enveloped Miss Marple in a warm embrace, her perfume a subtle blend of lavender and rosewater. "And you, Evelyn, are the picture of vitality. Miss Marple replied, her voice soft but laced with genuine affection. "The manor is as enchanting as ever. I see you're expecting quite the gathering." Evelyn linked arms with her as they ascended the steps. "Oh, yes. The whole clan descends tomorrow. Nephews, nieces, cousins too removed. It's been ages since we've all been under one roof. Arthur's coming from London, poor boy, always chasing some scheme or another. And Clara with her husband Reginald, they've just returned from a tour of the continent. Then there's Cousin Beatrice from Yorkshire, ever the eccentric with her collection of exotic birds." As they entered the foyer, sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the polished marble floor. A grand staircase swept upward, flanked by portraits of stern Hargrove ancestors, whose eyes seemed to follow their every move. Miss Marple paused to admire a particularly striking painting of Evelyn's late husband, Sir Reginald Hargrove, depicted in hunting attire with a faithful spaniel at his feet. "He was a fine man," Evelyn sighed, following her gaze. "Gone these 10 years, but the manor still echoes with his presence. Come, let's have tea in the conservatory." "The others haven't arrived yet, but I've invited the vicar and his wife for a prelude." The conservatory was a glass-enclosed haven, filled with potted ferns, orchids in full bloom, and wicker furniture arranged around a low table laden with delicacies: cucumber sandwiches, fruitcake dotted with cherries, and steaming pots of Darjeeling. As they settled in, the vicar, Reverend Thomas Blakely, arrived with his wife, Amelia, a plump, cheerful woman with a penchant for floral hats. The Reverend, tall and spectacled, carried an air of mild distraction, as if perpetually pondering a sermon. "Miss Marple, what a delight!" Amelia exclaimed, her eyes twinkling. "We've heard so much about your adventures in St. Mary Mead. Do tell us, have you encountered any intriguing puzzles lately?" Miss Marple chuckled modestly, her knitting needles clicking as she resumed her knitting. "Oh, nothing so grand as adventures, Mrs. Blakely, merely observations of human nature. People are much the same everywhere, you know, full of surprises, both pleasant and otherwise." The conversation flowed easily, touching on village gossip, the new schoolmaster's innovative teaching methods, which had ruffled some traditional feathers, a bumper crop of strawberries promising a splendid fête, and the mysterious disappearance of old Mrs. Finch's prize-winning jam recipe, suspected to be pilfered by a rival at the last county fair. Reverend Blakely shared a humorous anecdote about a baptism gone awry when a frog hopped into the font, eliciting laughter that echoed off the glass panes. Yet, under the conviviality, Miss Marple sensed undercurrents. Evelyn's fingers toyed nervously with her pearl necklace, and the vicar's glances toward the garden held a flicker of unease. As the tea progressed, a footman entered bearing a silver salver with the afternoon post. Among the envelopes was a plain one, addressed in block letters to Lady Hargrove with no return address. Evelyn opened it with a casual air, but her face paled as she read the contents. "Good heavens," she murmured, passing it to Miss Marple. The letter was terse, scrawled in uneven ink, the postmark local. "How peculiar," she said calmly. "A hint at a family scandal from 20 years ago? Evelyn, does this ring a bell?" Evelyn hesitated, her composure cracking slightly. The year 1932. That was when Reginald's brother, Uncle Harold, vanished during a hunting trip. Rumors swirled, debts, an affair, even foul play. But it was ruled an accident. He fell into the river, body never found. We buried an empty coffin and moved on. Who would dredge this up now? The vicar leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Malicious nonsense, surely. Willowbrook has its share of busybodies, but this smacks of spite. Perhaps a discontented servant or a villager with a grudge. Amelia nodded vigorously. Indeed. Remember last year when anonymous notes accused the baker of short-weighting his loaves? Turned out to be his apprentice playing a joke. This could be similar. Harmless foolery. Miss Marple observed the group keenly. Evelyn's nephew Arthur, though not yet arrived, was mentioned earlier as chasing schemes, suggesting financial woes that might link to old debts. Clara's continental tour hinted at extravagance, maybe a flight from creditors. And Beatrice with her birds, eccentricity often masked deeper quirks. And the vicar, his quick dismissal seemed almost rehearsed, as if he knew more than he let on. Quite possibly a prank, Miss Marple agreed, folding the letter neatly. Yet it's wise to be vigilant. Human motives can be as tangled as a skein of yarn. Shall we set it aside for now? The gardens look inviting for a stroll before dusk. The suggestion lightened the mood. They ventured outside, where the air was perfumed with lilacs and the sun dipped low, gilding the lawns in amber hues. Evelyn pointed out her prized rose arbor, where hybrid blues and shades of crimson and ivory competed for admiration. The vicar discoursed on the symbolism of gardens in Scripture, Eden's paradise versus the thorns of earthly toil. And Amelia shared a recipe for elderflower cordial that had won accolades at the parish bazaar. As they wandered, Miss Marple's thoughts drifted to parallels in her own village. She recalled a similar anonymous letter in St. Mary Mead that unraveled a web of jealousy among the Women's Institute members, leading to a surprising confession over bridge. Here, the estate staff caught her eye. The gardener, a burly man named Hobbs with soil-stained hands, paused in his work to tip his hat. A young maid, Elsie, curtsied shyly, her apron crisp and white.
Returning to the manor as twilight fell, the group parted with promises of reunion the next day. The vicar and his wife departed in their modest gig, waving farewell. Evelyn escorted Miss Marple to her guest room, a cozy chamber overlooking the river, furnished with chintz curtains and a four-poster bed. "Rest well, Jane," Evelyn said, squeezing her hand. "I'm so glad you're here. That letter, it's unsettled me more than I'd admit. Sleep soundly, my dear. Tomorrow brings fresh light, and with it perhaps clarity. Good night." Alone, Miss Marple unpacked her valise, placing her knitting on the bedside table. She pondered the letter's phrasing. Shadows of Willowbrook echoed the village's ancient name derived from whispering willows by the brook. A deliberate choice? And the reference to 1932, Uncle Harold's disappearance. She made a mental note to inquire discreetly about family histories. The evening deepened into night, the manor settling into quietude, broken only by the hoot of an owl and the distant murmur of the river. Miss Marple slipped into bed, her mind a whirl of observations, but content in the knowledge that the day had ended harmoniously. The letter, dismissed as a jest, hung like a faint cloud, yet the warmth of friendship and the promise of festivities ahead dispelled any lingering chill. Willowbrook slumbered peacefully, its secrets tucked away for another dawn. Chapter 2. Shadows over the Manor. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Miss Marple's room, casting intricate patterns on the polished floorboards like a delicate puzzle waiting to be solved. She awoke refreshed, the night's repose having sharpened her senses. Downstairs, the manor stirred with the gentle symphony of a household preparing for company. The clink of china in the breakfast room, the distant hum of vacuum cleaners, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with bacon frying in the kitchens. Miss Marple dressed in a simple blouse and cardigan, pinning the gold locket she'd found the previous evening to her collar as a reminder to inquire about it later. For now, the reunion's first full day beckoned, promising a blend of familial warmth and perhaps underlying currents she was eager to navigate. In the breakfast parlor, a sun-drenched space overlooking the rose garden, Lady Evelyn presided over a spread of poached eggs, toasted muffins, and bowls of ripe strawberries picked at dawn. Arthur was already there,
poring over a newspaper with headlines about post-war economic shifts, his ties slightly askew, as if he'd dressed in haste. Clara and Reginald joined soon after, Clara's laughter ringing out as she described a comical mishap from their train journey, a suitcase mix-up with a traveling salesman peddling dubious elixirs. "Good morning, all," Miss Marple greeted, taking her seat. "What a splendid start to the day! Those strawberries look divine, homegrown, I presume." Evelyn nodded proudly. "From our own patch. Hobbs tends them like children. Help yourself, Jane." As they ate, conversation turned to plans for the reunion. Beatrice's arrival was imminent, her station wagon laden with covered cages from which exotic squawks emanated. A tall woman in her late 50s with wild auburn hair and a flowing caftan embraced everyone with exuberant hugs. "Darlings, meet Lorenzo, my scarlet macaw. He recites Shakespeare on command. And this is Mimi, the cockatoo. She's a mimic extraordinaire." The group gathered in the conservatory to admire the birds. Lorenzo perched on Beatrice's arm, tilting his head as he intoned, "To be or not to be," in a gravelly parody that elicited peals of laughter. Mimi, meanwhile, echoed Clara's earlier laugh with uncanny precision, prompting Reginald to jest, "Careful, Mimi might spill our secrets better than we do." As the birds were settled into temporary perches among the ferns, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Miss Marple engaged Beatrice in conversation about her aviary. "How did your passion begin? Birds are such perceptive creatures, observing the world from above." Beatrice's eyes sparkled. "It started after my husband's passing, you see. He was a naturalist. We traveled to the Amazon once. The parrots there inspired us. Now they're my family, loyal, colorful, and full of surprises." Outside, the weather held fair, allowing for a leisurely walk to the village. The party set off down the lane, Miss Marple walking beside Clara, who confided in her ambitions. "I've always dreamed of opening a boutique in London, French fashions with an English twist, but funds are tight. Reginald's postings don't pay as one might hope." "Ambition is admirable," Miss Marple replied. "In my village, a young seamstress turned a similar dream into reality by partnering with locals. Sometimes the key is in unexpected alliances." They passed the church, where Reverend Blakely was tending the graveyard, polishing brass plaques on headstones. He waved them over, sharing a story about a recent archaeological find nearby, a Roman coin unearthed during drainage work, hinting at ancient trade routes through Willowbrook. "Fascinating," Arthur commented. "Value in history, eh? Perhaps the estate has buried treasures we could leverage." Clara rolled her eyes. "Always the opportunist, cousin. Some things are priceless." Back at the manor, luncheon was served on the terrace. Cold ham, salads crisp with garden greens, and a chilled vichyssoise that Mrs. Potts had perfected. As they dined, the sky began to darken, distant thunder rumbling like a disapproving elder. "Storm brewing," Perkins announced, securing garden furniture. "Best move indoors soon." The group retreated to the drawing room just as rain began to patter against the windows, escalating into a downpour that lashed the panes with relentless fury. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark bursts, while thunder cracked overhead, shaking the chandeliers. Trapped by the tempest, the family settled into armchairs, Beatrice's birds adding occasional commentary, Mimi squawking, "Stormy weather," in a mimicry of Reginald's earlier remark. Evelyn suggested board games, but Arthur, pacing restlessly, broached the inheritance again. "Aunt, with everyone here, why not clarify the will's details? Harold's share was redistributed after his disappearance, but rumors persist about discrepancies." Clara bristled. Rumors? You mean your insinuations, Arthur. If anyone's eyeing the pot, it's you, with your endless investments. That spice scheme sounds like another flop waiting to happen." Arthur's face reddened. "Flop? It's innovative. Unlike your lavish trips, how many gowns did you buy in Paris while the estate foots the bills?" Reginald intervened smoothly. Now, let's not let the weather sour our moods. Evelyn, perhaps a reading of the pertinent clauses could settle this." Evelyn sighed, retrieving a locked box from a sideboard. "Very well, but this is family business. Jane, Beatrice, you're welcome to stay. Your perspectives are trusted." Miss Marple, knitting in a corner alcove, nodded graciously. "I'm content to listen. Clarity often dispels shadows." As Evelyn unlocked the box and unfolded yellowed documents, the storm intensified, wind howling through the chimneys like mournful spirits. She read aloud, "The bulk of the estate to Evelyn for life, then divided among Arthur, Clara, and Beatrice, with provisions for debts and charities." But a codicil mentioned, "contingent upon resolution of any outstanding claims from 1932. Arthur leaned in. "See, Harold's disappearance left ambiguities. If he embezzled funds, as whispered, that taints the pot." Clara slammed her armrest. "Whispers? From whom? You're the one with gambling debts. I've heard about your London clubs. Perhaps you're projecting." Arthur's face reddened. "Flop? It's innovative. Unlike your lavish trips, how many gowns did you buy in Paris while the estate foots the bills?" Reginald intervened smoothly. Now, let's not let the weather sour our moods. Evelyn, perhaps a reading of the pertinent clauses could settle this." Evelyn sighed, retrieving a locked box from a sideboard. "Very well, but this is family business. Jane, Beatrice, you're welcome to stay. Your perspectives are trusted." Miss Marple, knitting in a corner alcove, nodded graciously. "I'm content to listen. Clarity often dispels shadows." As Evelyn unlocked the box and unfolded yellowed documents, the storm intensified, wind howling through the chimneys like mournful spirits. She read aloud, "The bulk of the estate to Evelyn for life, then divided among Arthur, Clara, and Beatrice, with provisions for debts and charities." But a codicil mentioned, "contingent upon resolution of any outstanding claims from 1932. Arthur leaned in. "See, Harold's disappearance left ambiguities. If he embezzled funds, as whispered, that taints the pot." Clara slammed her armrest. "Whispers? From whom? You're the one with gambling debts. I've heard about your London clubs. Perhaps you're projecting." Arthur's face reddened. "Flop? It's innovative. Unlike your lavish trips, how many gowns did you buy in Paris while the estate foots the bills?" Reginald intervened smoothly. Now, let's not let the weather sour our moods. Evelyn, perhaps a reading of the pertinent clauses could settle this." Evelyn sighed, retrieving a locked box from a sideboard. "Very well, but this is family business. Jane, Beatrice, you're welcome to stay. Your perspectives are trusted." Miss Marple, knitting in a corner alcove, nodded graciously. "I'm content to listen. Clarity often dispels shadows." As Evelyn unlocked the box and unfolded yellowed documents, the storm intensified, wind howling through the chimneys like mournful spirits. She read aloud, "The bulk of the estate to Evelyn for life, then divided among Arthur, Clara, and Beatrice, with provisions for debts and charities." But a codicil mentioned, "contingent upon resolution of any outstanding claims from 1932. Arthur leaned in. "See, Harold's disappearance left ambiguities. If he embezzled funds, as whispered, that taints the pot." Clara slammed her armrest. "Whispers? From whom? You're the one with gambling debts. I've heard about your London clubs. Perhaps you're projecting."
Beatrice clucked disapprovingly. "Children, enough. Harold was flawed, but family protects its own. My late husband knew him well. They shared expeditions. No proof of theft ever surfaced." Reginald stroked his chin. Yet, old ledgers might reveal truths. Evelyn, have you audited recently? The argument escalated, voices rising over the thunder. Arthur accusing Clara of extravagance, Clara retorting with tales of his failed ventures, a tea import that soured, a mining share that collapsed. Beatrice mediated, sharing a parable from her travels about siblings divided by gold in the Andes, only to find unity in adversity. Miss Marple, her needles clicking steadily, absorbed every word. Whispers of embezzlement echoed the anonymous letter's hints, but fresh angles emerged. Arthur's gambling, Clara's spending, Beatrice's insider knowledge from her husband. A misplaced brooch caught her eye on the carpet near Clara's chair. Silver with an engraved C, perhaps dropped in the heat of debate. Lightning struck nearby, plunging the room into momentary darkness, followed by a collective gasp. When lights flickered back, Evelyn stood. Enough. This storm mirrors our tempers. Let's remember why we're here, to honor bonds, not break them. As the rain eased to a drizzle, they migrated to the library, where a roaring fire dispelled the chill. Evelyn produced an album of sepia photographs, childhood snapshots of Arthur and Clara building forts in the woods, Beatrice as a girl with her first canary, family picnics by the brook before Harold's fate. "Look at us then," Evelyn said softly, turning pages, "innocent, united. Harold is here too, smiling at a hunt breakfast. Whatever happened, he loved this place." Arthur softened first. "You're right, Aunt. I apologize, Clara. My worries got the better of me." Clara nodded, retrieving her brooch with a sheepish smile. "And I yours. Let's toast to fresh starts." Glasses of port were poured, the fire crackling merrily. Reginald raised his. "To the Hargroves. Storms pass, roots endure." Beatrice's macaw added a comedic "Hear, hear!" mimicking the toast, lightening the mood further. Stories flowed. Arthur's boyhood prank of hiding the silverware, Clara's debutante ball mishap with a torn hem, Beatrice's adventure smuggling a parrot through customs. Miss Marple joined in with a tale from St. Mary Mead about a family feud resolved over shared heirlooms, her voice a soothing thread, weaving harmony. As the evening deepened, the storm cleared, stars emerging like polished gems. The chapter of discord had transformed into one of reconciliation, suspicions eased by nostalgia's gentle balm. Yet the misplaced brooch in Miss Marple's pocket whispered of deeper enigmas, a solitary clue glinting in the firelight as the manor settled into tranquil repose.
Chapter 3. The Midnight Confession. The moon hung low over Hargrove Manor like a watchful eye, its silvery glow filtering through the tall, mullioned windows and casting elongated shadows across the corridors. Miss Marple retired to her chamber shortly after the evening's reconciliatory toasts, her mind awhirl with the day's revelations, the codicil's contingencies, Arthur's financial pressures, and the enigmatic brooch that seemed to slip from Clara's possession at the most opportune moments. She placed the locket from the garden on her dressing table, its inscription, "To my beloved, forever in shadows, H. 1932, glinting faintly under the lamp. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the occasional creak of settling timbers and the distant call of a nightjar from the woods. Downstairs the household wound down in varied states of repose. Evelyn lingered in her boudoir, journaling her thoughts on the family's fragile unity, while Arthur paced his guest suite, sketching business projections on notepads. Clara and Reginald shared a whispered debate in their room about potential alliances with Beatrice, whose birds chattered softly in the conservatory below. The staff, too, had their routines. Hobbs locking the greenhouses, Elsie tidying the parlors, and Mrs. Potts banking the kitchen fires for the night. It was nearing midnight when a blood-curdling scream shattered the stillness, echoing through the halls like a banshee's wail. Miss Marple bolted upright, her heart pounding as she threw on her dressing gown and slippers. Doors flung open along the corridor, Evelyn emerging wide-eyed, Arthur in disheveled pajamas, Clara clutching a shawl, Reginald brandishing a poker from the fireplace. Beatrice from the adjacent wing called out, "What in heaven's name?" The scream originated from the library, where a huddled group of servants had gathered. Mr. Wilkins, the elderly butler with his impeccable silver mustache, lay sprawled on the Persian rug, his face contorted in agony, and a crystal tumbler shattered beside him. Foam flecked his lips, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. Elsie, the maid who had discovered him, sobbed hysterically. "I came for a book, couldn't sleep, and found him like this. Oh, sir, speak to me!" Miss Marple knelt swiftly beside Wilkins, her composure a beacon amid the chaos. She checked his pulse, erratic but present, and noted the tumbler's residue, a sticky amber liquid emitting a sharp, bitter almond scent. "Cyanide," she murmured. "Quickly, someone fetch milk and charcoal from the kitchen, antidotes for poison, and telephone the doctor and constable." Reginald dashed to the hall phone, while Arthur supported Wilkins' head. Evelyn, pale but resolute, directed the staff. "Hobbs, secure the doors, no one leaves. Mrs. Potts, prepare those remedies." As they administered aid, Wilkins gulping the milky mixture with feeble protests, the room filled with urgent questions. The library was a sanctuary of leather-bound tomes and antique globes, its air now thick with fear. An open-sash window admitted a chill breeze, fluttering the curtains like ghostly apparitions. Miss Marple's keen gaze swept the scene. A decanter of sherry on the sideboard, half empty, Wilkins' ledger book open to estate accounts, and a faint muddy footprint near the sill, too small for the butler's shoes. Constable Jenkins arrived within an hour, a burly young officer from the village station, his uniform hastily buttoned. Accompanied by Dr. Hargraves, a bespectacled physician with a no-nonsense demeanor, they burst in amid the storm's lingering rumbles. Dr. Hargraves examined Wilkins, administering an emetic and pronouncing prussic acid poisoning. Lucky he didn't ingest more. He'll recover with rest, but it's touch and go. Constable Jenkins, notepad in hand, began his inquiry with blustering authority. "Right then, who had access to the sherry? This looks like foul play. Motives, alibis." Accusations erupted like fireworks. Arthur pointed at Reginald. "You were the last to pour a nightcap, said it was from the Special Reserve." Reginald retorted, "Nonsense, I took brandy. Clara can vouch, I was with her all evening." Clara nodded vigorously, but Beatrice interjected. "What about the staff? Wilkins argued with Hobbs yesterday over tool inventories. Heard it myself from the greenhouse." Hobbs bristled. "That's a lie. We sorted it amicably. And Elsie, you've been sneaking about at odd hours, girl." Elsie flushed. "Only to read, sir. Her ladyship allows it." The constable fumbled, questioning haphazardly. He overlooked the footprint, misidentified the poison as arsenic, and accused Evelyn of negligence for not locking the decanter. "Lady Hargrave, as head of household, this falls on you, perhaps a disgruntled relative." Evelyn gasped. "Absurd! Wilkins has been loyal for decades." Miss Marple, who had been quietly inspecting the decanter, sniffing its contents and noting a slight discoloration, stepped forward. "Constable, if I may, the evidence suggests otherwise. Observe, the tumbler holds sherry, but the decanter's level indicates only one glass poured recently. Yet the almond scent is stronger here. Cyanide added post-pour, perhaps from a vial concealed nearby." She scanned the shelves, her fingers tracing spines until she pulled out a hollowed book, a false volume titled Estate Poisons and Remedies, an antique curiosity. Inside, a small file residue gleamed. See, this was the source. But why Wilkins? Dr. Hargraves confirmed. "Cyanide. used in gardens for pest control. Hobbs, you handle such things? Hobbs protested. Locked in the shed, keys with me. The room tensed, suspicions swirling. Miss Marple diffused with calm logic. Let's reconstruct. Wilkins entered for ledger work, routine for him. He poured sherry, but the poison was in the tumbler, not the decanter. Test it. The decanter lacks the scent. A quick taste by the doctor, diluted of course, verified. Clean. The tumbler was tampered with, placed specifically for someone else. Wilkins, in his duties, polishes glassware. Perhaps he used the wrong one by mistake. Wilkins, regaining color on a settee, wheezed confirmation. I grabbed the first tumbler from the tray, felt dizzy instantly. Accusations shifted to the staff. Mrs. Potts admitted a grudge. Elsie and I quarreled over kitchen duties. She's lazy with polishing. Elsie tearfully confessed borrowing silver polish without asking, but denied poisoning. Miss Marple probed gently. The footprint, dainty like a woman's shoe, and this thread caught on the sill, blue wool matching Elsie's uniform hem. Elsie broke down. It was me, but not for Wilkins. I meant it for Mrs. Potts. She threatened to sack me over a broken vase, said I'd never work again. I took cyanide from the shed, spare key hidden, dosed her favorite tumbler, the etched one she uses for her nightly tipple. Wilkins must have taken it by error. Gasps filled the room. Constable Jenkins, flustered, handcuffed Elsie. Attempted murder. Motive, revenge. But Miss Marple interceded. Wait, it's a petty grudge, yes, but let's hear her fully. Elsie, why the tumbler in the library? Sobbing, Elsie explained. Mrs. Potts reads here late nights. I placed it on the tray, knowing she'd come. Never meant harm to Mr. Wilkins. He's kind. Mrs. Potts, shocked, softened. Girl, I was harsh, but sacking? Over a vase? It was an heirloom, but forgivable. The revelation exposed a rift in the staff. Underpaid tensions, overwork from the reunion prep. Hobbs admitted overhearing the quarrel. Beatrice recalled a similar servant spat from her travels. Dr. Hargraves stabilized Wilkins, predicting full recovery by morning. Rest and fluids, he's tough. As dawn's first light crept in, painting the library rose gold, the group convened. Constable Jenkins, chagrined by his bundles, deferred to Miss Marple. Your insight saved us from rash judgments, ma'am. Evelyn proposed solutions. We'll bolster security, new locks, night patrols, and address staff concerns, fair wages, clearer duties. Elsie, you'll face consequences, but perhaps community service, not prison, if Mrs. Potts agrees. Mrs. Potts nodded. Aye, lass, learn from this. Elsie, remorseful, agreed. The family, relieved, shared a dawn tea, bond strengthened by the ordeal. Arthur praised Miss Marple. You're a marvel, turned panic to peace. Reginald added, Indeed, this exposes vulnerabilities, perhaps a family compact for mutual support. Beatrice's cockatoo, awakened, mimicked softly. All's well, lightening the mood. Miss Marple smiled modestly. Human frailties are universal. Grudges fester if ignored. But dawn brings renewal. As Wilkins was carried to his quarters, recovering steadily, the manor exhaled. The midnight crisis resolved into a lesson learned, security enhanced, and fragile peace restored under the rising sun's gentle embrace.
Chapter 4. Unearthed Secrets in the Garden. The dawn broke over Hargrove Manor with a serenity that belied the previous night's turmoil. A soft mist clung to the grounds, draping the gardens in a silvery veil as the first rays of sunlight pierced the haze, igniting dewdrops on the roses like scattered jewels. Miss Jane Marple rose early, her sleep punctuated by reflections on the cyanide incident and the locket's cryptic inscription from 1932. She slipped into a sturdy tweed skirt and a lavender cardigan, her knitting bag slung over her shoulder like a faithful squire. The manor hummed with subdued activity, servants tiptoeing to avoid disturbing the recovering Mr. Wilkins, and the family still abed after the midnight scare. Miss Marple chose to forego breakfast in the parlor, opting instead for a solitary stroll through the estate's gardens. The air was crisp, scented with damp earth and blooming honeysuckle, and the distant murmur of the Willowbrook stream provided a soothing counterpoint to her thoughts. The events of the night had exposed fissures in the household. Elsie's desperate act, Mrs. Potts' harsh oversight, and the family's simmering tensions over inheritance. Yet the resolution had knit them closer, a temporary salve. Miss Marple's instincts, honed by years in St. Mary Mead, whispered that deeper secrets lay buried, waiting to be unearthed like roots beneath the manicured lawns. She wandered past the formal parterres, where tulips stood in disciplined rows, and into the wilder reaches of the garden, where ancient willows arched over a mossy path. Their branches swayed gently, whispering secrets in the breeze, reminding her of the anonymous letter's ominous phrase, "The willows whispers." Near the largest tree, its roots gnarled like ancient hands, she noticed a patch of disturbed soil, partially concealed by ferns. Curiosity piqued, she knelt, using a stick to probe gently. The earth yielded easily, revealing a small leather-bound book, its cover weathered but intact, embossed with the initials R.H. Miss Marple brushed off the dirt, her heart quickening. The book was a diary, its pages yellowed but legible, penned in a precise hand she recognized from old letters as Sir Reginald Hargrove's, Evelyn's late husband. The entries dated to 1932, the year of Uncle Harold's disappearance. She tucked it into her bag, intending to read it privately, but not before scanning the first page. May 12, 1932. Harold's recklessness endangers us all. The artifact's sale was meant to save the estate, but his betrayal threatens ruin. Must protect Evelyn at all costs. The words sent a shiver through her. An artifact? Betrayal? This was no mere family squabble over debts. It hinted at a scandal with broader implications. She resumed her walk, pondering parallels from St. Mary Mead, where a farmer's hidden ledger exposed a smuggling ring disguised as a cattle trade. Here, the diary suggested wartime intrigues, perhaps tied to Harold's mysterious end. Returning to the manor, she found the family assembling in the morning room, a cozy space with chintz armchairs and a view of the orchard. Evelyn, looking weary but composed, poured tea from a silver pot. Arthur sketched idly on a napkin, his brow furrowed, while Clara adjusted her silk scarf, her eyes darting nervously. Reginald read a diplomatic journal, and Beatrice fed crumbs to her macaw, Lorenzo, who muttered, "Tempus fugit," in a comical baritone. "Good morning, Jane," Evelyn greeted. "You're up with the larks. Did the gardens inspire you?" "Immensely," Miss Marple replied, settling into a chair. "The willows are particularly evocative, such history in their roots. I found myself wondering about the estate's past, especially 1932. Evelyn's teacup rattled slightly. "A tumultuous year. The Depression hit hard. We nearly lost the manor. Harold's disappearance only compounded our woes." Clara interjected, her tone sharp. "Why dwell on ancient history? We've enough present troubles. Last night proved that." Arthur glanced up from his sketch, a map of spice roots. "History matters when it affects the trust. If Harold misappropriated funds, as some claimed, it could alter our shares."
Reginald folded his journal. "Let's not speculate wildly. Evelyn, have you any documents from that time? Old correspondence, perhaps?" Miss Marple observed their dynamics. Noting Clara's defensiveness and Arthur's probing, she decided to keep the diary secret for now, testing the waters. "In my village, old records often clarified disputes. A neighbor once found a deed that settled a century-old land feud. Quite enlightening." Beatrice, stroking her macaw, chimed in. "My husband kept meticulous notes during his expeditions with Harold. They dealt in artifacts, Roman coins, Saxon relics. Harold was passionate but careless. He once lost a bronze statuette in a card game." The conversation paused as Mrs. Potts entered with fresh scones. Her demeanor softened since Elsie's confession. "Beg pardon, milady, but the village florist delivered these for the reunion centerpiece." She gestured to a vibrant arrangement of irises and peonies, their fragrance filling the room. As they admired the flowers, Miss Marple steered the talk back. "Artifacts sound intriguing, Beatrice. Any connected to the estate?" Beatrice hesitated. "Possibly. Harold mentioned a family treasure, a relic from a wartime deal. He was vague, but it caused friction with Reginald." Evelyn sighed. "It was a chalice, supposedly Viking, unearthed during estate repairs in 31. Harold insisted on selling it to settle debts, against Reginald's wishes. After Harold vanished, so did the chalice. We assumed it was lost in the brook." The room grew quiet, the weight of old secrets palpable. Miss Marple's needles clicked rhythmically, her mind cataloging the diary, the chalice, and Harold's betrayal. She recalled the St. Mary Mead incident, where a missing heirloom, a silver candlestick, unmasked a butler's theft. Could the chalice be the key to the letter's threats? The morning progressed with preparations for a garden party, the family determined to restore cheer. Clara suggested a music recital, volunteering her violin skills, while Arthur proposed a croquet match, boasting his prowess. Reginald offered to organize a historical tour of the estate, citing his diplomatic knack for storytelling. Beatrice, meanwhile, planned to showcase her bird's talents, promising Lorenzo would recite poetry. As they dispersed to their tasks, Miss Marple slipped upstairs to read the diary in her room. The entries painted a vivid picture: Reginald's anguish over Harold's reckless deals, a clandestine meeting with a dealer in London, and a cryptic note about safeguarding the legacy in the willow's shade. One passage stood out. June 3rd, 1932. Harold met a stranger by the brook. Suspect foreign ties. If the chalice falls into wrong hands, our name is tarnished. Closing the diary, Miss Marple pondered. Foreign ties, wartime intrigue, perhaps espionage or black market dealings. The chalice's disappearance aligned with Harold's, suggesting more than an accident. She resolved to question Evelyn privately, but first joined the garden party preparations. The lawn transformed into a festive scene, tables draped in white linen, laden with lemonade and petit fours, a croquet set gleaming under the sun, and Beatrice's birds in gilded cages drawing gasps from arriving villagers. Reverend Blakely and Amelia arrived, the latter in a hat festooned with silk daisies. "Miss Marple, you're the talk of Willowbrook, solving poor Wilkins' poisoning. Brilliant." "Merely observation," Miss Marple demurred. "The garden's the real marvel today." As guests mingled, Clara's alibi for the previous night came under scrutiny. She claimed to have been practicing violin in her room, but Reginald, questioned separately by Miss Marple during a croquet game, mentioned no hearing music.
She was restless, he admitted. Said she was writing letters, but I saw her near the library earlier.
Miss Marple nodded, filing away the discrepancy. She approached Clara by the refreshment table where she was arranging flowers. "Your violin must be a comfort, dear. Did you play long last night?" Clara flushed. "Not long. My fingers were stiff. I took a walk instead. Needed air." "A walk near the library?" Miss Marple's suspicions deepened, but she smiled kindly. "Fresh air does wonders. In St. Mary Mead, a midnight stroll once revealed a poacher's trap, quite illuminating." The party gained momentum. Children chasing hoops, villagers admiring Lorenzo's rendition of Ode to a Nightingale. But tension flared when Arthur, tipsy on lemonade spiked with gin, cornered Clara near the arbor. "Your spending's draining the estate, cousin. Those Paris gowns, financed by family funds?" Clara's eyes flashed. "Hypocrite! Your gambling debts are the real threat. I heard you lost a fortune at Monte Carlo last year." Reginald stepped in, his voice smooth. "Let's keep the peace. Arthur, your ventures aren't spotless either." Miss Marple, nearby, overheard, her needles pausing. The diary's argument echoed the diary's hints of financial strain. She approached Arthur as he retreated to the willow grove, his face stormy. "Family disputes are trying," she said gently. "In my village, a similar row over inheritance led to a confession. Petty theft, not greed." Arthur sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right, Miss Marple. I took a loan against the estate years ago, small, to cover a bad bet. Repaid it, but it haunts me. Could that be what the letter meant?" His candor surprised her. A minor theft, unrelated to the chalice or Harold's betrayal, but it mended a rift with Clara, who overheard and softened. "We've all made mistakes, Arthur. Let's move forward." The siblings embraced, a moment of reconciliation that drew applause from nearby guests. Evelyn, watching, wiped a tear. "Jane, you've a gift for harmony." As the party wound down, the group gathered for a buffet luncheon under a marquee. Roast chicken, cucumber salad, and a trifle layered with raspberries. Beatrice's cockatoo, Mimi, mimicked Clara's violin notes, sparking laughter. Reginald shared a tale of a diplomatic faux pas in Vienna, lightening the mood further. Miss Marple, savoring a slice of trifle, reflected on the diary's revelations, the chalice, Harold's betrayal, and Clara's shaky alibi wove a complex tapestry. The luncheon ended with toasts to family unity, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows that danced with the willows. The chapter closed on a note of restored camaraderie, yet the diary in Miss Marple's bag pulsed with secrets, its pages promising deeper truths to unearth as the reunion continued. Chapter 5. The Phantom Visitor. The afternoon sun bathed Hargrove Manor in a golden glow, softening the edges of the previous night's drama and the morning's revelations. The garden party had left the family buoyed by a tentative sense of unity, though Miss Jane Marple's discovery of Sir Reginald's diary lingered in her mind like a half-solved crossword. The entries about a Viking chalice and Harold's betrayal in 1932 hinted at a scandal far weightier than Arthur's confessed loan or Elsie's misguided attempt at revenge. As she sipped a cup of chamomile tea on the terrace, her knitting needles clicking a steady rhythm, Miss Marple observed the household with her usual quiet acuity. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine, and the distant laughter of village children playing by the brook carried a deceptive calm. Inside, the manor buzzed with preparations for the evening's entertainment, a violin recital by Clara, followed by a display of Beatrice's parrots in the conservatory. Evelyn, ever the gracious hostess, coordinated with Mrs. Potts to ensure a light supper of smoked salmon canapés and lemon tarts. Arthur, reinvigorated by his confession, sketched plans for a family-funded spice market venture, while Reginald polished his anecdotes for the guests, his diplomatic charm masking a calculating gaze. Miss Marple noted these dynamics, her thoughts drifting to St. Mary Mead, where a village fete once unmasked a swindler posing as a philanthropist, a reminder that strangers often brought unexpected truths. As the clock struck 3, a commotion at the manor's front gates disrupted the tranquility. A sleek motor car, its chrome glinting like a predator's eye, pulled up the gravel drive. Out stepped a man in a tailored but slightly worn suit, his fedora tilted at a rakish angle. He was lean, in his late 40s, with a weathered face and a slight limp that seemed to favor his left leg. Carrying a leather satchel, he strode toward the entrance with an air of purpose, as if the manor owed him an audience. Evelyn, alerted by the footman, met him in the foyer, Miss Marple trailing discreetly behind. "Good day, sir," said Evelyn, her tone polite but wary. "To what do we owe this visit?" The man removed his hat, revealing graying temples and sharp green eyes. "Lady Hargrove, I presume. I'm Victor Langley, a distant cousin, descended from the Yorkshire Hargroves. I've come for the reunion, bearing news of great import." His voice was smooth, tinged with a northern accent, and he produced a yellowed envelope from his satchel. "This concerns the estate's inheritance, a matter unresolved since 1932. The family, drawn by the hubbub, gathered in the drawing room, a spacious chamber with velvet drapes and a grand fireplace. Arthur's brow furrowed, Clara clutched Reginald's arm, and Beatrice's macaw, Lorenzo, squawked, "Stranger danger," in a comical mimicry of the footman's earlier whisper. Miss Marple settled into an armchair, her needles a quiet metronome, as Victor laid out his case. "I've uncovered documents," he began, opening the envelope to reveal a sheaf of papers, proving a forged will from Sir Reginald's time. "My great-uncle Harold, your uncle, altered the estate's distribution before his disappearance. These letters, found in a Leeds archive, show he intended a portion for my branch, excluded unjustly." Arthur scoffed. "Convenient timing, Mr. Langley. And these papers, how do we know they're not forgeries themselves?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "Yes, and why surface now? The estate's been settled for years." Victor's smile was thin. "I've spent decades tracing my lineage. These letters, penned by Harold to a solicitor, detail a codicil granting my family a share, land near the northern boundary, plus a sum from the chalice sale. I seek only what is owed." Reginald, ever diplomatic, took the papers, scanning them with a practiced eye. The handwriting matches Harold's from what I recall of his correspondence, but authenticity requires verification. "Evelyn, may we consult your solicitor?" Evelyn nodded, though her face betrayed unease. "Of course. Mr. Langley, you're welcome to stay until we resolve this. The reunion is a time for family, after all." Miss Marple, observing silently, noted Victor's limp, a detail that sparked a memory of Willowbrook's folklore about a phantom wanderer, a figure said to haunt the brook's banks, limping from an old wound. In St. Mary Mead, a similar tale of a ghostly poacher had led to a living culprit, a farmer dodging taxes. Could Victor be exploiting local legend for credibility? The family adjourned to the library to examine the documents, spreading them across a mahogany table. The letters, dated spring 1932, described Harold's intent to secure funds for distant kin through the chalices sale, forwarded by a family betrayal. One mentioned a meeting by the Willow Grove, echoing the diary's cryptic note.
Miss Marple's fingers paused on her knitting as she caught Victor's glance at the window where the willows swayed in the breeze. "Mr. Langley," she said mildly, "your limp suggests a story. An injury from your travels, perhaps." Victor's expression flickered. "An old war wound. Shrapnel in '44. Nothing more." Beatrice, intrigued, chimed in. "My husband spoke of Harold's Yorkshire cousins, recluse lot, fond of antiquities. Did you inherit that passion?" Victor nodded. "I dabble in artifacts. Harold's chalice fascinated me. Its loss was a tragedy." The discussion grew heated as Arthur challenged the letter's provenance. Leeds archives? Conveniently obscure. And why no prior claim? Clara added, "You arrive unannounced, stirring old wounds. What's your real game?" Evelyn, strained, called for calm. "Let's verify these with Mr. Thorne, our solicitor, tomorrow. For now, let's prepare for the recital." As the family dispersed, Miss Marple lingered, examining the letters. The ink was aged, the paper brittle, but a faint watermark, a Leeds stationer's mark, caught her eye. She recalled a St. Mary Mead forger who used period paper to dupe collectors, suggesting Victor's claims warranted scrutiny. The recital in the ballroom was a welcome distraction. Clara's violin sang with haunting melodies, Mozart's adagios, and a folk tune from Brittany, her fingers deft despite her earlier agitation. Guests, including village notables like the schoolmaster and the florist, applauded warmly. Beatrice's parrots followed, Lorenzo reciting Keats with theatrical flair, while Mimi mimicked Clara's violin with eerie precision, drawing gasps and laughter. Miss Marple, seated near the back, watched Victor closely. He clapped politely, but seemed distracted, his eyes scanning the room as if cataloging its treasures. During a pause, she engaged him. "Mr. Langley, your arrival stirs memories of Willowbrook's tales. The Phantom Wanderer. Ever heard of him?" He chuckled. "Village folklore. A limping ghost by the brook. I assure you I'm flesh and blood." His deflection was smooth, but Miss Marple noted a tightening in his jaw. She shifted tactics. "In my village, a stranger once claimed kinship, only to be unmasked as a fraud seeking a widow's savings. People are endlessly inventive." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A cautionary tale, Miss Marple, but my claim is solid." Post-recital, supper was served in the dining room, candlelight flickering off crystal goblets. The mood lifted as Reginald shared a droll story of a diplomatic banquet where a misplaced fork caused an international incident. Arthur, loosened by wine, proposed a toast to family, flawed but enduring. Clara, her earlier ire softened, clinked glasses. And to music, which heals what words cannot. Beatrice's cockatude chirped, "To family," echoing Arthur, sparking laughter. Evelyn, however, remained subdued, her thoughts clearly on Victor's claims. As the evening waned, Miss Marple excused herself for a night walk, hoping to clear her mind. The gardens were bathed in moonlight, the willows casting spectral shadows. Near the brook, she spotted a cigarette stub, foreign, with a gold band, unlike any smoked by the household. Victor's satchel, she recalled, had a faint tobacco scent, a clue, perhaps, of his true intentions. Returning, she found Evelyn in the study, poring over old photos. "Jane, these claims unsettle me. Harold's branch was estranged. Why now?" Miss Marple shared her suspicions. Victor's limp mirrors the village legend, and his papers, while convincing, need scrutiny. I propose a discreet inquiry, perhaps through the vicar's Masonic contacts in Leeds. Evelyn agreed, her resolve firming. "I'll cable Mr. Thorne at dawn, but how do we proceed tonight?" "Observe," Miss Marple advised. "In St. Mary Mead, a con man posing as a surveyor was caught by his own boastfulness."
Victor may reveal himself similarly. The next morning, as the family breakfasted, Miss Marple orchestrated a subtle test. She mentioned a fictional Hargrove heirloom auction in Leeds, watching Victor's reaction. His eyes lit up briefly before he masked it, asking, "What item? A chalice, perhaps?" The slip confirmed her hunch. She confided in Evelyn, who arranged for the constable to verify Victor's identity. By noon, Jenkins returned with news. Victor Langley was a known grifter, hired by an unknown party to disrupt the estate's succession with forged documents. His limp was effected, a prop to evoke the phantom legend. Confronted in the drawing room, Victor's bravado crumpled. "I was paid to stir trouble, nothing personal. A London contact, anonymous, offered a hefty sum." Constable Jenkins escorted him away, the family stunned but relieved. Evelyn declared, "No more shadows. We'll audit the estate fully, ensure transparency." The chapter closed with a fireside gathering, the family sharing stories of resilience, Clara's recovery from a failed audition, Arthur's rebound from a business loss, Beatrice's survival of a jungle storm. Miss Marple contributed a tale of a St. Mary Mead swindler undone by a forged love letter, cementing the mood of triumph. As the fire crackled, Lorenzo squawked, "Truth prevails," echoing the sentiment. The phantom visitor's scheme had been thwarted, harmony restored, yet the chalice's mystery lingered in Miss Marple's mind, a quiet promise of deeper truths to unravel.
Chapter 6. Whispers from the Attic. The morning after Victor Langley's dramatic departure from Hargrove Manor dawned with a crisp clarity, as if the air itself had been cleansed by the unmasking of his deception. The sky was a vibrant blue, dotted with wispy clouds that drifted lazily over the Cotswolds hills. Miss Jane Marple, ever an early riser, stood at her window, watching the sunlight gild the willow grove where secrets seemed to gather like dew. The diary of Sir Reginald Hargrove, with its cryptic references to a Viking chalice and Harold's betrayal in 1932, weighed heavily on her mind, as did the locket's inscription and the lingering question of who had hired Victor to stir trouble. Her knitting bag, slung over her arm, held the diary alongside her needles, a quiet reminder that every stitch and clue wove a larger pattern. Downstairs, the manor hummed with cautious optimism. The family, shaken by the poison attempt and the false cousin's scheme, rallied around Evelyn's call for transparency. Breakfast was a subdued affair in the morning room, with plates of kedgeree and toast accompanied by strong tea. Arthur, his usual bravado tempered, outlined a plan to audit the estate's accounts, while Clara sketched designs for her dream boutique, her optimism buoyed by the family's newfound unity. Reginald, flipping through a newspaper, commented on a diplomatic summit in Geneva, his tone light but his eyes watchful. Beatrice, feeding her parrots in the conservatory, hummed a tune, her macaw, Lorenzo, echoing with a squawked, "Harmony reigns!" Miss Marple joined them, her lavender shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders. "The manor feels brighter today," she remarked, accepting a cup from Evelyn. "A storm cleared is a chance to rebuild." Evelyn nodded, her face less strained. "Thanks to you, Jane. Victor's exit lifted a weight, but I can't shake the feeling we're missing something. 1932 keeps resurfacing like a persistent ghost." Clara glanced up from her sketchpad. "Ghosts again. Let's focus on the future. My boutique could showcase local crafts, Willowbrook wool, perhaps." Arthur chuckled.
Practical as ever, cousin. But I agree with Aunt Evelyn. Those old secrets might affect our shares. We need to dig deeper. Reginald folded his paper. The solicitor arrives tomorrow. Until then, perhaps we explore the manor's records ourselves. There's an attic full of archives, Reginald's old files, Harold's correspondence. Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. In St. Mary Mead, an attic trunk revealed a will that settled a decades-old feud. Old papers have a way of speaking truth. Evelyn clapped her hands. Then it's settled. After breakfast, we'll venture upstairs. Jane, your knack for details will be invaluable. The attic of Hargrove Manor was a cavernous space accessed by a spiral staircase behind a tapestry in the east wing. Dust motes danced in shafts of light streaming through dormer windows, illuminating stacks of crates, trunks, and forgotten furniture draped in sheets. The air smelled of aged wood and musty paper, with a faint tang of lavender from sachets tucked among the relics. Cobwebs clung to rafters, and a rusty bicycle leaned against a wall, its spokes glinting like a relic of childhood adventures. The group spread out, each tackling a section. Arthur pried open a crate of ledgers, coughing as dust billowed. Clara sorted through a box of photographs, her fingers lingering on images of family picnics by the brook. Reginald examined a shelf of bound journals, while Beatrice, ever curious, rummaged through a trunk of old clothes, pulling out a moth-eaten velvet cloak with a delighted gasp. Evelyn, guided by memory, directed Miss Marple to a corner where Sir Reginald's personal effects were stored. "Here," Evelyn said, unlocking a brass-bound chest, "his papers, letters, diaries, even sketches. He was meticulous, unlike Harold." Miss Marple knelt beside her, her fingers deftly sorting through envelopes tied with faded ribbon. Among them she found a bundle of letters in a feminine hand, addressed to Reginald from a Margaret in 1932. The tone was intimate, hinting at a clandestine affair. "My heart aches for our stolen moments by the willow. Harold suspects, but I care not. The chalice is our secret, safe in the vault." Evelyn's breath caught. "Margaret? She was a governess here, left suddenly after Harold's disappearance. I never knew." Miss Marple nodded thoughtfully. "Affairs can unravel families. In St. Mary Mead, a vicar's dalliance with a choir mistress led to a blackmail scheme, revealed by a misplaced hymn book. These letters may hold the key." As they read, the letters painted a vivid picture. Margaret and Reginald's romance, hidden from Evelyn to spare her pain. Harold's discovery, threatening exposure unless the chalice's proceeds were shared. A heated confrontation by the brook days before Harold vanished. One letter, dated June 10th, 1932, read, "Harold's greed blinds him. He plans to sell the chalice to foreign agents. Traitors, Reginald says. I fear for us all." Clara, overhearing, gasped. "Foreign agents? Was Harold involved in espionage?" Reginald frowned, setting down a journal. "Possible. The war was looming. Artifacts were currency in shadowy deals. Harold's recklessness fits the profile." Arthur, flipping through a ledger, added, "Here's an entry. Payment to M.L., £500, June 32. Could that be Margaret? A payoff to silence her?" Beatrice, emerging from the trunk with a feathered hat, interjected,
or to protect her. My husband spoke of Harold's temper, once threw a dagger at a guide in Peru over a disputed relic. The revelations stirred unease, the attic's shadows seeming to darken. Miss Marple, her needles idle in her lap, pieced together the threads, the chalice, Harold's betrayal, Margaret's affair, and the anonymous letters' echoes of 1932. Could the letter's sender know of this affair, using it to destabilize the family? The group descended for luncheon, the attic's discoveries weighing heavily on their minds. Served in the conservatory amid Beatrice's chattering parrots, the meal featured cold pheasant, asparagus spears, and a raspberry fool that melted on the tongue. Conversation turned to the letters, with Evelyn grappling with her late husband's secret. "I feel betrayed," she admitted, her voice low. "Reginald never spoke of Margaret, yet I understand. War, debt, Harold's chaos, love finds strange paths." Clara, usually sharp, softened. "Aunt Evelyn, you're stronger for it. Let's confront this together." Arthur nodded. "I've had my own confession. My loan wasn't just a bet. I borrowed from the estate to fund a friend's venture, hoping to repay tenfold. It failed, but I've cleared the debt. I hid it, fearing judgment." Reginald raised an eyebrow. "Honesty now, Arthur? That's progress. Perhaps I've been less candid, too. My diplomatic post is under review. Funding Clara's dreams has stretched us thin." Beatrice, feeding Mimi a grape, laughed. "We're all flawed darlings. My husband once pawned a rare parrot to settle a debt. Returned it, of course, but secrets bind us." Miss Marple, sipping her tea, mediated gently. In St. Mary Mead, a family reconciled over a shared orchard theft. Admitting faults cleared the air. Your candor strengthens you. The confessions, raw and unscripted, wove a tapestry of trust. Evelyn proposed a family council to review the estate's future, ensuring no
Hidden debts or secrets lingered. "We'll face the past head-on," she declared. "Jane, your presence inspires truth." As they cleared the table, a clatter from the attic staircase startled them. Hobbs, the gardener, appeared, his face flushed. "Beg pardon, m'lady, but I was checking the roof for leaks. Found this in a crate." He held out a tarnished silver cigarette case, engraved with H.H., Harold Hargrove. Miss Marple examined it, noting a hidden compartment containing a folded note. "Vault secure. Chalice safe. M. trusts me. June 15th, 1932. The date was days before Harold's disappearance. Evelyn gasped. "The vault? There's a small safe in Reginald's study, never used since his death." They hurried to the study, a book-lined room with a heavy oak desk. Evelyn unlocked the safe, revealing only dust and a single item, a brass key etched with a willow motif. "This was Reginald's," she said. "He mentioned a deposit box in Oxford, never checked after his passing." Reginald frowned. Could the chalice be there, hidden to protect it from Harold's schemes? Arthur's eyes lit up. "If it's valuable, it could stabilize the estate. No more squabbles." Clara, skeptical, countered, "Or it's another red herring. We need proof." Miss Marple, holding the key, suggested a trip to Oxford tomorrow, with the solicitor's guidance, might clarify. "For now, let's secure this and focus on the evening." The family agreed, the key locked in Evelyn's safe. The evening brought a storytelling session in the drawing room, lit by flickering candles. Beatrice shared a tale of her husband's jungle adventure, narrowly escaping a panther. Clara recounted a Parisian masquerade where she danced with a disguised prince.
Arthur, emboldened, described a spice market in Bombay, its colors and chaos inspiring his dreams. Miss Marple contributed a St. Mary Mead story of a lost locket, unrelated to the one she'd found, that led to a widow's reunion with her son. She said, "Objects hold memories, and sometimes truths." As laughter filled the room, Lorenzo squawked, "Secrets out!" mimicking Beatrice, drawing chuckles. The chapter closed with the family stronger, their confessions forging bonds. The cigarette case and key sparkled with promise, a tangible link to the past, while the attic's whispers settled into a hopeful hush, the manor glowing with the warmth of shared vulnerability.
Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Hargrove Manor, casting a soft glow over the polished oak floors and the intricate tapestries that adorned the walls. The air held a crisp edge, a reminder of the shifting seasons, though the gardens outside still bloomed with late summer roses. Miss Jane Marple awoke with her usual clarity, her thoughts already weaving through the tapestry of clues she gathered. The anonymous letter's cryptic threat, Sir Reginald's diary hinting at a Viking chalice, the locket's inscription, Victor Langley's thwarted scheme, and the newly discovered cigarette case with its note about a hidden vault. The brass key with the willow motif, now locked in Evelyn's study safe, pulsed with promise, an invitation to unravel the deeper secrets of 1932. Her knitting bag, resting on the bedside table, held the diary and locket, silent partners in her quiet quest for truth. Downstairs, the manor stirred with purposeful energy. The family, bolstered by the previous day's confessions in the attic, prepared for a pivotal day. Evelyn had arranged for Mr. Thorne, the family solicitor, to arrive from Oxford to verify documents and investigate the mysterious deposit box hinted at by the key. Breakfast was served in the dining room, a grand space with a crystal chandelier and a long table set with porcelain. The spread was hearty: scrambled eggs with chives, grilled kippers, and fresh-baked brioche, reflecting Mrs. Potts' renewed vigor after her reconciliation with Elsie. Arthur, his usual restlessness subdued, reviewed investment proposals, while Clara practiced scales on her violin in the corner, her notes a gentle counterpoint to the morning's chatter. Reginald, impeccably dressed, read telegrams from his diplomatic contacts, and Beatrice fussed over her parrots, whose cages lined the conservatory like vibrant sentinels. Miss Marple entered, her lavender shawl neatly draped, and accepted a cup of Earl Grey from Evelyn. "The manor feels purposeful today," she observed, her voice warm. "A new chapter, perhaps, after yesterday's revelations." Evelyn smiled, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. "I hope so, Jane. The key in that note, chalice safe, suggests Reginald hid something significant. I pray it brings closure, not more strife." Arthur looked up from his papers. "If it's the chalice, it could be worth thousands, enough to secure the estate for generations." Clara paused her playing, her bow hovering. "Or it's a myth, like Victor's claims. We need facts, not dreams." Reginald folded his telegrams. "Thorne will bring clarity, but we must be vigilant. Victor's employer remains at large, stirring trouble." Beatrice, feeding her macaw Lorenzo a slice of apple, added, "My husband always said artifacts carry curses as often as value. Harold's obsession cost him dearly." Miss Marple nodded, her needles clicking softly. "Objects do carry stories. In St. Mary Mead, a hidden ring in a vicarage attic exposed a wartime spy. Quite a tale. Let's see what this key unlocks." As breakfast concluded, the family planned the day. A morning meeting with Mr. Thorne, followed by a village walk to consult Reverend Blakely about local records from 1932. But the calm was shattered by a sudden cry from the upper hall. Mrs. Potts burst in, her apron askew. "Milady, the staircase, it's collapsed. Lady Evelyn nearly fell."
The group rushed upstairs to the grand staircase, a sweeping structure of polished mahogany that led to the guest wing. The third step from the top was splintered, its support beams sawed through, leaving a gaping hole. Evelyn, pale but unharmed, stood at the landing, clutching the banister. "I stepped lightly, thank heavens, or I'd have gone through," she gasped. "It was deliberate. Someone meant harm." Miss Marple, quick to act, examined the damage. The cuts were fresh, the wood dust still clinging to the edges, and a faint metallic gleam caught her eye. A small saw blade wedged in the crevice, its handle wrapped in coarse twine. "Sabotage," she murmured. "Done recently, likely last night after we retired. The blade suggests a tool from the estate, perhaps the gardener's shed." Hobbs, summoned from the greenhouse, protested. "My tools are locked tight. I checked after the cyanide affair. No spares missing." Constable Jenkins, called from the village, arrived with his usual bluster, notepad in hand. "Another attack. First poison, now this? Lady Hargrove, enemies abound, it seems." Arthur bristled. "Ridiculous! Who'd target Aunt Evelyn? It's the estate they're after. Victor's backers, perhaps." Clara, her voice sharp, pointed at Reginald. "Or someone closer. You've been pushing for estate audits, Reg. Convenient if Evelyn's out of the picture." Reginald's jaw tightened. "That's slander, Clara. I was in my room all night. Ask the maids." Beatrice, stroking her cockatoo Mimi, intervened. "Enough! We're family, not foes. Jane, what do you see?" Miss Marple, kneeling by the step, noted the blade's twine matched a coil in the greenhouse she'd seen during her garden walk. "The sabotage was targeted," she said calmly. "But Evelyn's routine, always descending after breakfast, suggests intimate knowledge. Yet the blade's placement is clumsy, meant to be found. A warning, perhaps, rather than murder." Evelyn, regaining composure, declared, "We'll repair the step and tighten security. No one enters the workrooms without checks. Jane, your clarity is a godsend." As workmen were summoned to fix the staircase, Mr. Thorne arrived, a wiry man in his 60s with a pince-nez and a briefcase stuffed with legal papers. In the library, he reviewed Victor's forged letters, confirming their falsity through a Leeds contact. The watermark was modern, clever, but flawed. "As for the key, I've traced the Oxford deposit box to a bank on High Street, registered to Sir Reginald in 1932. We can visit this afternoon." The family, eager for answers, agreed to accompany him. But Miss Marple, piecing together the diary, letters, and now the staircase sabotage, sensed a pattern. The anonymous letter, Victor's scheme, and now this attack all pointed to someone manipulating the family's fears, exploiting the 1932 scandal. She recalled a St. Mary Mead case where a tampered gate exposed a jealous sibling's plot. Could a similar motive lurk here? Before departing for Oxford, Miss Marple proposed a discreet inquiry. She approached Clara privately in the conservatory, where the parrots chirped softly. "Your violin playing is lovely, dear," she began. "Last night, Reginald mentioned you were restless. Did you notice anything unusual near the staircase?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on a fern. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered the hall around 2. I heard creaking, thought it was the storm. I didn't see anyone." Her evasiveness was telling. Miss Marple smiled gently. "In my village, a sleepless night led a baker to spot a thief. Honesty often lights the way." Clara bit her lip. "All right, I saw Reginald near the staircase carrying a lantern. He said he was checking the windows, but it was odd." Armed with this, Miss Marple joined the family for the Oxford trip. The drive through rolling hills was serene, the city's spires gleaming under a noon sun. At the bank, a vaulted chamber with marble floors, Mr. Thorne presented the key. The clerk, a prim woman with a ledger, led them to a deposit box sealed since 1932. Inside was a velvet pouch containing a silver cigarette case, identical to Harold's but engraved with R.H., and a letter in Reginald's hand.
If found, know the chalice was sold to protect Evelyn. Harold's betrayal forced my hand. Forgive me." Evelyn, reading it, wept softly. "He carried this alone to save us." Arthur, examining the case, found another hidden note. "Funds in trust Lloyd's Bank for estate's future. Harold's foreign deal was treasonous. Chalice sold to thwart it." Reginald's face darkened. "Treason? Harold was dealing with enemy agents?" Miss Marple, her mind racing, connected the dots. The diaries, foreign ties, Margaret's affair, Harold's greed, and now Reginald's nocturnal wanderings. Back at the manor, she orchestrated a confrontation in the drawing room. The family gathered amid velvet cushions and flickering lamps. "The staircase was no accident," she began. "Clara saw Reginald near it last night, and the saw blade matches greenhouse twine." Reginald paled, but his voice was steady. "I was checking windows, as I said, but I confess I suspected Clara of stirring trouble. Her spending worries me. I examined the staircase for loose boards, nothing more." Clara gasped. "You think I'd harm Evelyn? You're the one with motives. Your career is faltering, and the estate's wealth tempts you." Arthur intervened. "Stop it, both of you. We're tearing ourselves apart." Miss Marple raised a hand. "Consider the pattern. The letter, Victor, now this. Someone exploits family fears. Reginald's actions were misguided, not malicious. But the twine points elsewhere, to someone with greenhouse
access." She turned to Hobbs, summoned from the garden. "You mentioned a spare key missing after the cyanide incident. Who else frequents the greenhouse?" Hobbs hesitated. "Only Mr. Reginald. He requested herbs for his study." The room tensed. Miss Marple continued. "Reginald? Your diplomatic post under review, you said. Financial strain might tempt one to force an inheritance. Did you tamper with the step to scare Evelyn into settling the estate?" Reginald stood, outraged. "Never! But I admit I borrowed twine for a package. Someone could have taken it." Miss Marple's gaze softened. "Then let's test intent. The blade was left visible, a scare, not a trap. I believe Clara's husband, Reginald, acted alone, driven by desperation, not murder." Reginald broke, his voice cracking. "It was me. I meant to frighten Evelyn into hastening the trust's division. My career's collapsing, debts mounting. I used the twine, left the blade to be found. I'm sorry." Evelyn, stunned, forgave him. "Your family, Reginald, will help you rebuild." Constable Jenkins, called again, took Reginald's statement, recommending leniency for his confession. The family, shaken but united, dined in the dining room, a feast of roast lamb and minted peas. Beatrice's parrots chirped, "All's well," mimicking Evelyn's toast, "to trust, rebuilt stronger." Miss Marple shared a St. Mary Mead tale of a sabotaged fence mended by family honesty, sealing the evening's harmony. The chalice's mystery remained, but the storm of suspicion had passed, leaving the manor bathed in candle-lit hope.
Chapter 8. Dawn of Resolution. The dawn over Hargrove Manor broke with a serene radiance, as if the Cotswolds themselves were exhaling after a week of turmoil. Golden light filtered through the ancient willows, their branches swaying gently by the brook, casting dappled reflections on the water's surface. The air was crisp, scented with dew-kissed lavender and the faint musk of turned earth from the gardens. Miss Jane Marple stood at her guest-room window, her lavender shawl draped over her shoulders, her knitting bag resting on the sill beside Sir Reginald's diary, and the locket inscribed with "To my beloved, forever in shadows, H. 1932."
The week's cascade of mysteries, the anonymous letter, the poisoned sherry, Victor Langley's deception, the tampered staircase, and the attic's revelations had woven a complex web, all tethered to the lost Viking chalice and the secrets of 1932. Today, she sensed, would unravel the final knots, bringing clarity and closure to the Hargrove family. Downstairs, the manor stirred with a quiet resolve. Evelyn, fortified by the family's confessions and Reginald's arrest for the staircase sabotage, had planned a final gathering to close the reunion, a drawing-room assembly to settle the estate's future and banish lingering doubts. The staff, now under vigilant oversight, moved with renewed purpose. Mrs. Potts arranged vases of fresh peonies, Elsie dusted the chandeliers with care, and Hobbs pruned the rose bushes with a meticulous hand. The family, though scarred by betrayal, gathered around Evelyn, their bond strengthened by shared trials. Miss Jane Marple descended to the morning room, where sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a breakfast spread of poached eggs, smoked haddock, and warm brioche. Evelyn presided with a calm dignity, her silver hair catching the light like a halo. Arthur, his usual bravado replaced by earnest focus, reviewed a modest business plan for a local tea shop. Clara, sketching a new dress design, radiated cautious optimism, her boutique dreams now tethered to practicality. Beatrice, feeding her parrots in the adjacent conservatory, hummed a melody, her macaw Lorenzo squawking, "Light dawns," in a mimicry of her cheerful tone. "Good morning, Jane," Evelyn greeted, pouring tea from a silver pot. "Your presence has been our guiding star. Today we lay the past to rest." Miss Marple smiled, settling into a chair, her needles clicking softly. "Every puzzle finds its solution in time. In St. Mary Mead, a misplaced journal once resolved a village feud. Today, I believe, your chalice will do the same." Arthur looked up, his eyes hopeful. The deposit box note mentioned a Lloyd's trust. £20,000 could secure the manor without dispute. Clara nodded, setting down her pencil. "And clear Harold's shadow. But who orchestrated this chaos? Victor was a hired pawn, Reginald a desperate fool. Someone else wove the web." Beatrice, entering with her cockatoo Mimi perched on her shoulder, added, "My husband always said old secrets breed new enemies. Someone knows too much about 1932. Miss Marple's thoughts swirled, cataloguing clues. The letter's poetic menace, the diary's hints of Harold's treasonous deal, the locket's romantic enigma, the cigarette case's vault note, and the key's promise of hidden funds. Reginald's sabotage was a symptom, not the cause. Someone with intimate knowledge had exploited the family's fears. She recalled a St. Mary Mead case where a cryptic note unmasked a postmaster's embezzlement, suggesting a professional hand in this affair. As breakfast concluded, Mr. Thorne, the solicitor, arrived with a leather satchel, his pince-nez glinting with purpose. "I've confirmed the Lloyd's Trust," he announced, spreading documents on the table. "Established by Sir Reginald in July 1932, it holds £20,000 from the chalice's sale, intended for the estate's future, but a condition requires resolving claims of betrayal, likely Harold's actions." Evelyn's brow furrowed. Harold's treason or Margaret's affair? The diary mentioned both. Arthur leaned forward. Or another player. The letter's sender knew details only an insider could, perhaps a former ally of Harold's. Miss Marple, her gaze steady, suggested, "A final gathering to air all truths. Let's invite key figures, family, staff, village contacts. The answer lies in shared knowledge."
Evelyn nodded, arranging a noon assembly in the drawing-room, a grand space with velvet drapes, a roaring fire, and ancestral portraits gazing down like silent judges. The family gathered, joined by Reverend Blakely, his wife Amelia, and the staff, Mrs. Potts, Hobbs, and Elsie. Mr. Thorne stood by a rosewood table, documents at hand, while Beatrice's parrots added occasional commentary, Mimi chirping, "Truth unveiled," to soft laughter. Miss Marple took the floor, her voice calm but commanding. "This week has tested us. Poison, deception, sabotage, all tied to 1932. The anonymous letter warned of a scandal resurfacing. Victor's forged will exploited it, and Reginald's act was a desperate echo. But the true architect hides among the details. Let's unravel them." She held up the locket. "Found by the Willows, inscribed to a beloved by Harold, likely Margaret, the governess. The diary reveals their affair and Harold's plan to sell the chalice to foreign agents, a treasonous act Sir Reginald thwarted by selling it himself, securing the funds in trust." She produced the cigarette case. "This note, vault secure, chalice safe, shows Harold believed the chalice was preserved. The deposit box confirmed Sir Reginald's protective sale. But the letter's sender knew this history, someone with access to private records." Clara interjected, "A family member, but we've bared our souls." Arthur shook his head. "Perhaps an outsider, a solicitor's clerk, a former servant." Reverend Blakely cleared his throat. "Parish records note Margaret's departure to Bristol in 32, marrying a bank clerk. Could her family know more?" Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "A clerk with access to legal or banking files might uncover such secrets. In St. Mary Mead, a clerk's ledger exposed a smuggler's plot. Mr. Thorne, your firm handled the Hargrove estate in 32. Any staff with deep ties?" Thorne adjusted his pince-nez. "My clerk, Mr. Ellis, joined in 38. Trained by Mr. Grayson, who managed the estate then. Ellis has access to our archives, old letters, contracts." A murmur rippled through the room. Evelyn's face tightened. "Ellis? He's been loyal, discreet." Miss Marple nodded. "Discretion can mask ambition. Let's summon him." Mr. Ellis, a slight man with thinning hair and a nervous tic, arrived from Oxford by mid-afternoon, his ledger clutched tightly. The drawing-room was hushed, the fire's crackle the only sound, as Miss Marple began. "Mr. Ellis, the letter's phrasing, Willer's whispers, bloodline's poison, mirrors documents from 1932. Did you access Grayson's files?" Ellis's tic intensified. I review archives for audits. It's routine." She held up the diary. "This mentions a foreign deal. Details only a solicitor's confidant would know. Victor's anonymous employer, the staircase sabotage, both suggest manipulation. Your firm's London connections could facilitate such a hire." Ellis's composure faltered, his voice trembling. "I meant no harm. Grayson's files detailed the chalice, Harold's betrayal, a scandal that could destabilize the estate. I saw opportunity. The trust's funds tempted me. My retirement looms, my savings meager." Evelyn gasped. "You sent the letter? Hired Victor?" Ellis nodded, head bowed. "I used Grayson's old paper to craft the letter. Sent it to you to scare you into settling the trust early. Victor was a contact from a London case, paid to push the forged will. The staircase, I whispered the idea to Reginald, knowing his debts. I never meant true harm." Arthur clenched his fists. "You played us like pawns." Clara's voice softened. "But it's over. The trust is safe." Beatrice's cockatoo, Mimi, squawked, "Guilty!" mimicking Ellis's tone, easing the tension with a ripple of laughter. Constable Jenkins, summoned by Evelyn, took Ellis's confession. "Fraud and conspiracy,"
he declared, cuffing him. "Your candor may lighten the sentence, but you'll face justice." Evelyn stood, her voice resolute. "The trust will be divided fairly. Arthur, Clara, Beatrice, you'll each have a share to pursue your dreams. The manor remains my home, its future secure. Jane, your wisdom saved us." Miss Marple demurred. "I merely followed the threads. In St. Mary Mead, a hidden ledger once exposed a thief. Truth always rises." The afternoon unfolded with a celebratory tea in the garden, tables draped in white linen, laden with almond tarts, cucumber sandwiches, and elderflower cordial. Reverend Blakely offered a prayer of gratitude. Amelia shared village tales of a new library fund, and the staff joined, their loyalty reaffirmed. Arthur outlined a cooperative tea shop. Clara planned a boutique with local artisans, and Beatrice proposed a bird sanctuary on the estate's edge. As the sun dipped, casting a warm glow over the willows, the family toasted to resilience. Lorenzo chirped, "Family endures," echoing Evelyn's words. The manor glowed with candlelit hope. The chalice's mystery resolved, Harold's shadow lifted, and the anonymous threat silenced. Miss Marple, preparing to depart, reflected on human nature's complexities: greed, love, redemption, all laid bare under Willowbrook's watchful skies. The reunion closed with harmony restored, a perfect end with no threads left dangling, as the manor settled into a peaceful twilight,